Conversations on Dance is proud to have Yumiko as a continued partner in 2021. Yumiko is a company inspired by beauty and standards. They take great pride in their impact as a socially and environmentally conscious brand. In this new year, Yumiko is more committed than ever to promoting transparency and sustainability in their business practices, while staying devoted to eco-friendly production practices that will contribute to the longevity of a healthy globe. Yumiko is passionately focused on connecting and lifting our dance community to promote a more loving and equal world through the power of togetherness. The New York City flagship store is open to customers with limited hours, or you can shop online at yumiko.com. Be sure to follow along on Instagram at Yumiko to stay updated on new releases, live events, store updates, and all things 2021. I'm Rebecca King-Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Breeden, and you're listening to Conversations on Dance.
Welcome to the second part of our interview with Balanchine Ballerina Gloria Govrin. If you are tuning in and haven't heard part 1 just yet, we hope that you will go back in your feed to episode 212, where we chat with Gloria about her career. Today in part 2, Gloria tells us about where her career took her after retiring from the stage. She has since gone on to a prolific teaching career, being considered one of the leading masters of the Balanchine Technique. She is currently the artistic director of Eastern Connecticut Ballet.
So what was the point where you decided that you were ready to retire from the stage? And at that point, did you have an idea what the next step would be for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was 34. And Mr. B was already looking at younger dancers. Mm-hmm. So I knew there wasn't going to be anything new for me. Mm-hmm. And I had, from all those years of jumping, my knees were killing me. Mm-hmm. And they weren't getting any better. You know, you should be able to bounce back when you're younger. And as you age, it takes a longer time. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about that. I started teaching at the School of American Ballet, I would say, after I had been in the company a year.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So, yeah, Mr. B, part of it happened with the Ford Foundation grant that the school got. But he put me at the school. I remember starting in Children's 2. And then he moved me up. I did A1, A2. I taught B class. I taught C class. Mm-hmm. I sometimes filled in and did company class, but not too often. Whenever we weren't performing, I was teaching. Mm-hmm. So it was like just a natural progression for me to think, okay, I'm going to teach. However, I never thought to teach at the School of American Ballet. Mm-hmm. Even though I had done that all those years. First of all, I wanted to leave New York. Mm-hmm. I had been burglarized. It was traumatic for me. And I'm kind of a country girl. I was not. I found the city very lonely because I don't put myself out there. And so you can shrink into your little studio apartment and not see people. So I thought, I'll open a school. Why not? I knew nothing about business. I was a teacher, but I was going through on a vacation and stopped in New Hope, Pennsylvania, and I thought it was such a cute town. I said, well, why don't we do it here? I did no research. I didn't know if there were any kids there or anything. I just did it. Mm-hmm. And I got into trouble 2 years in, money-wise. Mm-hmm. And so I went back up to New York to talk to Mr. B to see what should I do? I was going to lose it.
Right.
And while I was there, I was going through such trauma that I had lost a whole bunch of weight.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. B looked at me and he said, "Dear, why don't you do coffee?" So I went, okay. And I was staying with Carol Sumner, and I get a call. It was It was the morning of New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody on the other end said, "When you come back to New Hope, don't go back to your apartment because it's not there. It just burned down." So
my goodness.
I lost everything in the fire. And Mr. B said to me, because I did talk to him, and he said, "Well, I could send you to Chicago to work with Maria."
Mm-hmm.
That was his idea.
Right.
And when I went back to New Hope, people were so nice to me. I had never lived in a small town in my life. And the whole town sort of came to the rescue. They moved my ballet school to the firemen came, and they disassembled the bars and the mirrors and took them across the river to a place that I found to have my ritual continue. People were so nice that I decided I was going to give it a try, because even if I went back and I took class, it was like starting all over again.
Right.
And I just didn't see that happening for me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go back and make it a go and have it all. And it all worked out. And I met some really nice people. And then it turned out too that, I've taught everything from 3-year-olds to adults. And I used to have adults come up from Philadelphia, which is an hour away from where my school was. They used to come to take class with me because I used to treat them like dancers. They wanted somebody to, recognize that they were serious.
Right.
And so I made a lot of friends because I taught it. All the people I see on the street were in my class.
Right.
so it was a great experience for me.
Right. Was there a learning curve for teaching? Did you have to, especially teaching, small children is so different from, okay, I just come in, I teach a company class. I was in a company yesterday, so I know how to teach a company class. What was your process like in becoming a dance educator?
Trial and error. I would, a lot I learned from Balanchine, because I used to watch him in class, and there were some people he was all over the place with, giving a million corrections. And then there are other people he never said a word to. Like, I don't think I ever saw him correct Patty McBride. And I realized she was such a natural dancer. It's almost he didn't want to remove the personality of the person.
Oh,
the way he was teaching, because you find out when you teach is, especially younger children, they start moving like you. They imitate you. Right. So unless they have a really strong personality, that may be good and it may not be good. I don't know. I think a lot of it I learned when I started teaching. I was still dancing. So I would look at somebody and see that they were having a problem. And so then I would do the step to try to figure out what was wrong with what they were doing. And that worked for a really long time. And I had my school for like 15 years. So I learned, by your students you'll be taught. They taught me how to teach. And I also, when I started, I used to take Mr. B's class in the morning and then go to SAB and give the same class at night. And I already knew the corrections. I knew what they were going to do wrong. So that made me smart. and that's how I just figured it out, and the one thing, Mr. B always used to say, number one, he would say, "Dear, don't choreograph class." And number two, he would say, "Give them what they need, not what they want." And I always remembered that, because it's very easy to, you want to be liked.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's why it's like teaching a company class is so difficult because you want people to like you. And if you correct them, you don't know whether you should correct them or not.
Right.
But I remember him saying, you could go across the floor and I can see 10 things you're doing wrong, but I'm only going to tell you about one of them so that you can fix it.
Right.
And he was very wise. And I just, I ate it all up. I wrote it down. I dissected it and I used it teaching. And I teach a rather simple class. Because what I learned from Mr. B was the thing that works the best is repetition. He taught me how to teach. And he used to say things where, he would never let anybody applaud after class. And he would say, why? I don't understand them saying, he gave such a great class. What does that mean? How did you do? I could, I've been known to stand in front of a class and say, if you don't like this step, I can give you 16 brises going front and 16 brises going back. And I'm sure you're not going to like it as much as this step. So.
I find this so interesting that Balanchine chose you to start teaching pretty much right away. When we talked with Susie Pilar, she told us the same thing, that he asked her to start teaching while she was still dancing as well. And so I can't help but think that he was already planning how it would be passed down. Did you get that sense? And of course, no one would know how his legacy would live on at that time, but did you get that sense that you might be able to play a very important role in passing on the Balanchine torch?
I did, but I didn't. I'm sure if I had gone to him and say, I'm ready to retire, is there a place for me at the school? I think he would have found a place for me. But I never did. I never did that. It was just, for some reason, I didn't do that. And he said to me at Saratoga, because there was a little party for me, Carol Sumner gave me a party at the end of Saratoga, and Mr. B took me aside, and he said to me, he understood why I wanted to go off on my own, because that's what he did. And then I didn't understand it then. And now I think to myself, you know what? I probably could have stayed. But I didn't like living in New York. I really didn't. I wanted to go somewhere else. I had a boyfriend. I had, I was ready for a new chapter.
Right. Well, I have to think too that he could see how you could reach a different group of people too, right? Than just if kind of everyone had stayed at SAB, it would have been more challenging to reach out into the country.
And they used to call me all the time. They used to call my mother. I mean, after the only number they had, I guess, was when I lived at home. And I had already left, and I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they would call and ask if I could substitute teaching. And I'd say, I'm not around there. And his mama would say, well, if you could hang around more, then we could use you more. That's not what I'm looking for.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah. So you did go on to live in Philly and work, teach at the Rock School for a long period of time. And you were a really integral part of the San Francisco Ballet School when Rebecca and I attended summer programs. So how did those life changes come about? When did you say, okay, I'm ready for another change?
Oh, wow. Yeah, you know what? I went from, my daughter was very young, and it was a struggle for me because I wasn't a good business person. So when Ricky Weiss became the director of Pennsylvania Ballet, I called him and I told him I was thinking of closing my school, and did he have anything? And he said, can you come in tomorrow and teach company class? And I said, sure. And I came in and I taught class. And after class, he said, can you start tomorrow? I said, no, I'll start for the summer. And then I asked him, what do you want me to do? And he said, everything. So he said, I want you to teach at school. I want you to teach company. I want you to stage some of the ballets, work with children. I said, fine, great.
Awesome.
And so I was there for a long time. And then I had a falling out with the Spassoffs, and they fired me. And
Their loss. That's their loss.
Yeah.
And Rebecca and my gain at San Francisco Ballet School.
Exactly right.
Well, what happened was that was during the 50th anniversary of the New York City Ballet. And there was this big celebration at Lincoln Center. And I was not working. I was trying to hold it all together. And I went with my daughter. And Helgi came up to me and he said, I hear you're a great teacher. And I said to him, well, thanks to whoever said that to you. And I'm looking for a job. And then I didn't hear anything. And then he called Violet, he called Sandy, he called all these people about me. And then he called me up and he said, do you want to come and teach for the summer? And then we'll talk about, he asked me if I wanted to be the director of the school. And I said to him, I don't do administrative work. I said, I am a teacher. And he said, that we have an administrator. The most you would have to do is make a schedule. I said, I can do that. I said, as long as I can teach. I do not want to be in an office.
Right.
And so I taught, and it was really funny because he invited me out to dinner he said, you can bring your daughter too. So Olivia, my daughter, was saying, well, it has to be good news because he wouldn't invite me. Bring your daughter and we're not going to use you.
That's very true.
Very insightful.
So then he asked me and I said, great. And I ended up in San Francisco. I've moved around. I went to Minneapolis. Trying to get back to the East Coast because that's where my daughter was.
Right.
And she's really. I have a brother who lives in Florida, but we're really not that close. And my parents are gone, and there's my daughter. And I didn't want to be on the other side of the country.
Right.
So I would take any job that kept getting me closer to where I wanted to be.
Yeah. And now you're where you want to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, this is perfect. Because when I retired, my whole idea was, because I like living in the country, I love animals and I love gardening and all that stuff. My idea was to have a small school where the students could get really good training so that when they were ready to go to New York, they would be on a par with the students who were already there. Right. And I didn't send my kids for the summer. I waited until they were 16. Right. And then I would funnel them into the school that way. And that was my dream. Now I'm living my dream, only I don't have the responsibility of paying the bills. I have this wonderful school and nice students, and I live in a nice little house on a lake, and I'm 10 minutes from the school. And even now during the pandemic, people they don't understand why I'm teaching, because I'm in that age group that's pretty dangerous. Right. But if I didn't teach, I wouldn't see anybody. And that would be horrible for me. I can't wait to get in the studio and teach. And so I teach 6 days a week. Everybody else in the school teaches 5 days a week. And somehow I always get that 6th day in. But you know what? It's comfortable. I love it. And it's like what I originally decided to do, but again, I don't have to pay the bills.
When you were telling us that, one thing came to mind. Right at the beginning, we were talking about your career, and you said that you never felt confident as a dancer. But I see when you're telling us that you're, going in and teaching company class, and you're going all these places, and people want you as a teacher. Did you find a different kind of confidence in your teaching career?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my God, I got a wealth of information from Balanchine, so much. And I remember talking with John Clifford. He came to Philadelphia to do something. He and I went out to lunch, and I looked at him and I said, he left us a very difficult legacy because and he even used to say when he was teaching, don't tell anybody this. They'll think you're crazy, like put your heels down and things like that. And it was, and it has been difficult, but I believe so much in just having seen it work for so many students.
Right.
I mean, I remember teaching for somebody in Pittsburgh, and I had these kids. And the teacher said to me, I can see them improving in front of my eyes. Usually you give something and maybe, 4 months later you think, they thought it. But there is something about the structure of that Balanchine training that has a strength to it that sort of knits it all together. And I believe in it. I truly believe in it. And it's hard because I think it's a smaller club that you belong to. And so, the hands are different, the speed is different, the tempo of the class is different, the way it's put together. But in the end, I think it's really, when you look at those dancers, it's more American. It has a look to it, even if you don't intentionally have put that look on people, but it's somehow the way it's put together at the bar, it works. It really does. So anyway, I feel confident in what I do.
Right.
But if I think it's not working, I'll try something else too.
I have to be sentimental for just a moment, hearing you talk about that. When I was in your class at San Francisco Ballet School in the summer, that I had those aha moments of like, I was sort of familiar with Balanchine style, but not really until I was there. And I remember specifically you working with us on turning from a straight back knee. And I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like, why would you do it any other way? And I know what you mean. Like, you had that, you explained to us why, not just do it this way. Right. There was a whole conversation surrounding it. And I know Michael and I talk about that a lot when we're teaching. We try to do that same thing to tell dancers who aren't as familiar with it, the why. And it's so cool to see those aha moments kind of happen again,
Yeah, well, that's what Balanchine did for us. And there were several years that he taught. We had class like every day when we weren't dancing. There were 2-3 hour classes in the in the studios up on 82nd Street, no air conditioning in the summer. And he not only told us what he wanted, he told us why. And the why is really important.
Yep.
It's yeah, and I guess there are other styles that would tell you the why too, but then it's your choice as to what you want to do. I know a lot of my girls who, after they leave me, and they'll go as a they get a contract with a small company, and they come back. And they're spotting the corner and they're doing pirouette like that. And I'm going, not my class. No way. wow.
Gotta switch back.
Oh yeah. It's
on something else. And they have to learn how to, it doesn't work unless they believe it. I don't think it will ever make anybody happy if they did something that they really truly believe looks good and that's what they want. And then in order to keep a job, you have to dance in a different way.
Right.
I think that would be very difficult. I never had to do that.
Right.
But I see it teaching wise. I think Allegra was supposed to teach in Banff and she couldn't. And so they called me and I said, okay. And the guy who ran the program picked me up at the airport and we're driving out to where they have all the houses and classes. And I looked at him and I said, well, I'm a Balanchine teacher. And I said, what I need to know from you is, do you want the watered down version or do you want the real deal? Because I can do either.
Yeah.
And he said, I want the real deal. And I said, good, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But, not everybody wants that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you do encounter resistance. It's a real thing.
Yeah, because it's not, well, a lot of people go back to their roots, the way they were taught originally. Right. And I understand that. Another Balanchine saying was, dear, you have to have patience. And when you give a correction, every time you give it, you have to give it like it's the first time you're hearing it.
That's very good. I love that because lately, I have to confess, there was just one class I teach every week, and I really felt like I was just drilling. You're saying the same thing, but it's just when there can be a level of frustration when you're just like, I said this 70 times, and we have to, we got to do plie on and, guys. It's not one.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I've had that. I used to have that experience in San Francisco when I was teaching year-round program. And I had one class, and I used to finish class and go into the office and going, why aren't they getting it? I don't understand it. And February would come, and they were doing it. And I would think, oh, they did hear me. They just weren't ready to put it in their bodies. Right. Yeah. So you have to give them some time.
Right.
But Mr. B always talked about patience and, be persistent. He always used to say you have to be persistent. And I learned everything I know from him. Absolutely everything.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up, and maybe, another sentimental moment, something that moved me a lot, as we're friends on Facebook, and you posted this early on in the pandemic, and it was just a photo of you in a tendu, and you said, I had to do a bar today to remember who I am, because everything was so weird and messed up. It still kind of is, but like that sense of being connected to something bigger than us, like forever, and what everything that's given to you, you keep giving back. I just felt so moved by that and reminded, like, okay, yes, that's what we are here for, not to have meltdowns about pandemics.
And also, I think, especially now with the uncertainty of everything's been taken away. And as a teacher, I can't think of anything more noble to do in these times where you see children who, they can't do 32 fouettes, but they can learn how to do a tendu battement, and they know somebody really cares about them.
Right. Yeah.
They have something to work on. It's, I can't think of anything I would be rather doing. I mean, look what's happened. I almost feel like entertainment and the arts, and I include fine dining and all of that stuff mixed in, is almost going to have to start all over again from the
Mhm.
beginning. When I was in the company, there'd be like a snowstorm, and we would, at City Center, go on with our program. And I remember Jacques Dubois saying, "Oh, we can start now. The audience just arrived in a yellow cab," because there were times when there were probably more people on stage than
Dead in the house.
in the audience.
Oh my gosh.
And when you think about Balanchine building that from nothing, and there were times when there were threats of strikes, and Mr. B would say, "Well, we just pick everything up and move to Brooklyn." That's what he used to say.
Yeah.
It didn't. He never showed that it bothered him. He always he believed so in what he did, and he built it from nothing. And then when he finally got his theater at Lincoln Center, he so deserved it. So deserved it. And when you think of all those ballets that he choreographed, look at Symphony in C. The stage at City Center is like a postage stamp. It is so small. He choreographed these big ballets, and he knew that one day he would have his theater.
Yeah.
And he did, talk about persistence. And, he came, and there was nothing here. There weren't even good dancers. He had to make good dancers.
Yeah.
Right.
From the very, very beginning. So, hard work, believe in what you do. He always used children a lot in his ballets. Harlequin on, millions of little kids. And he made a difference in the world, and we as teachers are making a difference in the world. And we're so lucky to have a profession where we can leave our mark. Why are you here? For what reason?
Yeah. Well, like you said, he had to make good dancers, and then he made good teachers like you who make good dancers. It's all circle.
And it's all full circle.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's such a beautiful place to finish the main part of our interview. But we do have a final section where we call it our lightning round, where we just ask you some quick questions and you think of what your initial response would be. It's not a trivia thing or anything. It's just, first response. So,
Okay.
if you could come back to the stage tomorrow and dance one ballet, what would it be?
Brahms Schoenberg.
Yes.
That sounds right.
In Brahms. Yeah.
Do you have a proudest moment as a teacher?
Oh, gosh. Proudest moment as a teacher. Well, yeah, I have a girl now who's in a company, and that makes me proud.
Yeah.
Because I remember when she got her first point shoes, and I said to her mother, "She's going to do it."
Aww.
You can just tell. You can tell that personality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a ballet that was choreographed after you retired that you would have loved to have danced?
Vienna waltzes.
Good pick.
Is there a favorite correction that you've been giving a lot recently, and you've given with patience, but still had to give a lot?
Yeah, point in front of your nose.
Essential.
Yeah.
I once had a girl too. Point in front of your nose.
Oh my gosh.
Should turn her head. That's so good. That's great. Is there a favorite sort of anecdote or Balanchine story that you like to tell your students as like a lesson?
Oh, wow. There's so many. I think one of them is, he had such a great way of explaining things. So when I always give an exercise, I give slow tendus, 2 counts in and 2 counts out. And then the second time around, I always do 2 counts out. And then I have them lift their leg. And as they lift it a little bit off the floor, try to turn it out more. And then come back. And I explained that the way Mr. B used to explain how it's like having an empty tube of toothpaste. And you think you have to go buy more toothpaste. So the next time you're at the store, you buy toothpaste. And it's still sitting in the drawer because you can squeeze out. You can always get a little more out of the tube of toothpaste.
I love it.
I love that. I haven't heard that before. That's so great.
So our last one, is there something that's been keeping you going during this pandemic? Maybe a TV show, music, a new skill that you're developing? We've been asking people that. Is there something?
Well, I found out that I hate to cook.
So did I.
I used to love it, but after raising a family, and I hate going food shopping, so I've been trying these little things where people they send you the meals and you put them first. Putting them together is too much work.
Right.
So now I get them so that I put them in the microwave. I'm getting very lazy about that. I did learn to Zoom, which is a big accomplishment.
Okay, that's important.
And you'll keep it around, I
We're
bet.
grateful for that. Very grateful.
Yeah, and I also, teaching, if somebody could just figure out how to make the music sync with
Oh my God.
I know.
that delay is the worst part. But I found over the summer, I got closer to my students because they were little people on the screen. Their little names were there. I was with them all the time. And then when I would say, okay, that was it, they'd all rush to the camera to see what I was going to say. And it's, I think learning how to Zoom, and I wish I didn't have to, but I'm glad I did, But today, I got a call before I talked to you guys. Should we have a snow day or should we Zoom classes tonight? And I said, definitely a snow day. Kids don't want to do class in their bedrooms anymore. They really want to be in the studio.
Yeah.
And so, we're trying our best to, I just think the kids need, we were surprised. I've been teaching class in the studio since August, and we've pared down how many students can be in a class, and here we are in the winter, and I teach with the door open. The door open. They changed all the overhead fans so that it's up and stuff. So it somehow it's worked.
Good.
And the kids really feel a little more normal once they get into the studio.
Yeah.
This has been really frightening. I feel like I'm in a movie. Just like when you're out in the country and you put on some music and you think, oh, maybe this is part of the movie where I'm driving along and you can hear the music. There's a whole musical score that goes with it. But I feel like, are we all going to one day, start fighting with each other and turn into zombies? And
right. It's very that.
Yeah.
I hope the next movie we have to be in is a romantic comedy. This is not really the look.
Yeah. So, what's hard, I think, to even comprehend is, you're teaching ballet. Is there going to be any ballet? Is there going to be an audience? There will be, but when?
Right.
And you can start put things together, but are people going to feel safe sitting in a theater next to thousands of other people? That's going to take time. It really is. And I used to think, I've always thought that ballet was important. It was just an important thing. It makes good people, good citizens. And, I'm happy to know that parents feel that they should send their kids to class.
Right.
That it's an important thing for their well-being.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so we're doing something good.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Gloria. It's been such a pleasure, and we're so grateful that we got to have you on. And we can't wait to share.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. It's been a while, and you it's my favorite subject.
Ours
We really
too.
appreciate it, and we're so generous with your time, and we really enjoyed every moment of it. So thank you. Thank you for joining us this week. If you would like to support the Conversations on Dance podcast, there are a few ways that you can help. Click over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Download episodes when you listen to allow our analytics to better understand our listenership. Join our Facebook group, Conversations on Dance, Friends of the Pod, or you can offer a donation. Conversations on Dance has always been and will always be free to our listeners. You can help us continue to create and produce this unique behind-the-curtain look at the dance world by visiting conversationsondancepod.com/support. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week.